panel for today. We've heard so much about talent and the importance of it. And every conversation I have with CEOs, it's the first thing they think about when they get up in the morning. How do I attract and retain good quality talent? As we've heard this morning, talent is that key ingredient and one of the most pressing matters facing BC companies. And how they identify and achieve their sustainability goals and align that with their employees that are increasingly choosing companies that reflect their values is important. So to explore this topic, we have a great panel of leaders who are developing talent, seeking talent to scale their companies, and or working with clients to ensure that they've got the raw ingredients to make a better business and a better community. And all of it engaged through an ESG journey as part of the organizations that they operate in and support. Our first panelist is Joy Johnson. She's the president and vice chancellor of Simon Fraser University. Joy is a passionate advocate for higher education and its power to transform lives and impact communities. Under Joy's leadership, the university is embarking on advancing meaningful sustainability goals through not only their operations, but also their academic offerings to students in the community at large. Joy is joined by Edoardo De Martin, who is the Chief Technology Officer with CubicFarms. CubicFarms is a rapidly growing and globally disruptive ag tech firm in the Fraser Valley, looking to advance sustainable agriculture products through advanced automation and technology approaches that enable on-site commercial scale food and livestock feed production that reduces energy, reduces water consumption, and will disrupt transportation supply chains globally. And they do that while producing healthier feed and healthier food. Edo joined CubicFarms earlier this year after leading the team at Microsoft as the general manager for Microsoft's Canadian Development Center. And lastly, our active and participant moderator is Brent Cameron, who is the board chair for Boyden Canada, a global executive search firm, and Brent is the managing partner of their Vancouver office. Brent has extensive experience supporting clients through executive hiring decisions and brings to this discussion a unique understanding of the shifting expectations of both employers and employees as they look for alignment on the values, priorities, and opportunities in their search decisions. So thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to turn over to Brent to lead us through this next discussion on the most important issue that I hear daily: talent and how to attract it, retain it, and identify it. Over to you, Brent.
Great. Well, thanks, Craig, and good morning, everyone. And yes, a topic near and dear to my heart, talent. And, we'd be in a war for talent regardless, given the demographics. And so organizations would be struggling and competing to find the talent. You layer on ESG, and talent has a choice of where it wants to go. Mm-hmm. And what we're finding increasingly is it's not just about the money, obviously. It's not about a whole bunch of things that maybe 20, 30 years ago companies could take for granted. It's about other things. It's about the values. It's about the sustainability goals. It's about the social goals. It's about the governance of the organization. And so I think some of the large organizations have maybe been ahead of this curve. Simon Fraser's been known for this for many years. TELUS, we were hearing about earlier. Smaller and mid-sized companies, probably a newer area for many of them. And certainly we see that with our clients, where they're having to really shift their focus and how they measure these, how they attract talent around these types of topics. So looking forward to today's discussion. I think there's a Q&A box. So if audience members out there have questions for our panelists, please put them in the box and I'll try and work those in. What we're going to do is start with some introductory remarks from Joy and Edo in terms of their organizations and their ESG journey. And then we'll focus particularly on the talent side. But I think the context setting is useful to start with before we focus exclusively on talent, because it is a broader organizational journey around ESG. It's not just about talent. There's a whole bunch of different aspects to it. So Joy, we're going to start with you, if that's okay. And I mean, as I mentioned, SFU has been recognized not just in Canada, but globally as a leader in this space in terms of your own operations, in terms of your reporting on this. But, SFU, it's multifaceted. You've got researchers who do work in this area. You've got students on campus who are coming there to study in different related sort of areas. And of course, are the future talent pipeline as well. You also got a small municipality living up on your Burnaby Hill campus. And so you've got it in a whole bunch of different ways. And so maybe just, how has SFU determined its priorities around sort of ESG, and maybe, some of the biggest challenges or any learnings? And so that's a broad question, but just maybe an opening from you on those sort of areas.
Well, thank you so much, Brent. I want to begin by acknowledging that I'm privileged to be speaking to you today from the beautiful, unceded, and sunny traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Squamish, and Coquitlam people. And want to thank the Business Council of BC for organizing these events. I've really been enjoying the conversation this morning. It's been really, really interesting. And one of the points that I think has been raised is that we attract talent based on the values of our organizations, and that's certainly true for universities as well. Our students are looking for universities where their values are aligned with students' values, and same with our faculty. And certainly the major thrust of our work at SFU in relation to ESG has focused on both sustainability and inclusion. And I'm going to really focus on sustainability to begin with. And then, as you said, we maybe will open it up a little bit more and talk about talent. And in particular, I'd like to focus on inclusion, diversity, and talent. So, as an organization, as you've already mentioned, we have a complex, we're a complex organization. And so we have to address the same sustainability issues as many organizations. We have to think about what's the carbon footprint of our operations. We have to think about where we're going to invest our funds. And we have to think about how any of these actions will reflect our institutional values. However, I think the other piece is that there's an additional set of responsibilities that we need to think about because of our core mandate as an institution. We do have a responsibility to educate students, to conduct research, and also for SFU in particular, to engage with our communities. And so when we think about sustainability, positive or negative, I think we have to go beyond, obviously, the operations of our universities and think much more broadly about sustainability. So the question is, like, where do you begin? How do you set your goals? And so we do try to take as comprehensive an approach as we possibly can and look for where we can have the most impact. So certainly we are working on decarbonizing our operations. We are releasing our Race to Zero goals today as it happens. And we've thought long and hard about those goals. And we do our pledging to be net zero by 2035. We're also working, as I've mentioned, on responsible investing and have lowered our carbon footprint of our investments by 60% since 2016. But in addition to that, we offer 200 courses each year on various aspects of sustainability. We publish about 1,000 papers, academic papers per year on sustainability-related topics. And we spend considerable effort, I must say, trying to translate these findings, because I think everyone recognizes that a paper that's published is not useful until it's utilized. So we spend time translating and working with these findings to try to find ways to make a difference, both in policy and in practice. So in terms of doing the work, luckily, we have a community that's passionate about sustainability. As many of you might recognize, a university is certainly a difficult ship to steer. And I make no illusion about that. It's complex, it's a decentralized environment. And so I can't tell a professor, go and do research on sustainability. But luckily, I work at an institution where our professors and our students definitely are passionate about this. I can name an institutional priority and have done so to focus on sustainability. But I don't find myself having to work, luckily, don't find myself having to work particularly hard to bring people along. This is the issue of our time, and our students are demanding that we as an organization pay attention, particularly to the climate emergency. So the challenge for all of us is that sustainability is not simply, and we've talked a little bit about this already this morning, I've heard conversation about this. It's not simply a technological problem, although we do need innovation. It's not simply an economic problem. It's not just a social problem or a cultural problem. It's all of these things. And that's what's so, I think, really complex. It can be really daunting. And the issues are certainly very, very large. And so one thing that I am particularly pleased about at SFU is that I work in a place where people are really willing to try to tackle very difficult and complex questions. So the challenge for a university administrator really is to figure out how to harness this power to find ways to get people working together to amplify their impact. And some of this is internal, getting people to work together within SFU, finding mechanisms for that to happen. But it also, and we recognize this, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, it's really important to work with our partners, our industry partners, both locally and internationally as well. And so in terms of just a few examples, in terms of practical applications in business and in the broader community, we do have partnerships, for example, with Vancouver, Burnaby, and Surrey, trying to work with those communities to bring practical solutions to the table. We're working with Burnaby, for example, on a 3-year initiative to engage in a community dialogue on local climate action. And our researchers are working in Surrey to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from their district energy systems. And these are just a few examples of how these partnerships are really important, bringing our communities together to solve problems together. And I would say through all of this work, we do need to apply an equity and inclusion lens, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in a few minutes. But maybe I'll leave it there, and I'll look forward to diving in more detail on the talent question.
Great. Thanks, Joy. Appreciate those comments. And I don't know if everyone quite appreciates how lucky we are and already set up in BC in terms of our post-secondary infrastructure. I think for a province the size of BC to have, UBC, SFU, UVic, UNBC, BCIT, world leaders in their own areas, in their own right, in different ways, is an incredible advantage already. They attract talent here, they churn out talent, they do research. So a huge part of what will, as I think Jerry and Bill were saying, in the future. We'll come back to some of your points on the connections to the community and also on DEI. Edo, maybe let's go to you though for a moment and just CubicFarms, because you're living kind of right in the middle of all this in terms of an organization who has an ESG commitment, whose values and purpose as a rapidly growing agri-tech firm is right in the heart of everything we're talking about here. So would love to just hear a little bit more about that and how you're enabling more sustainable practices in agriculture and sort of how your company's ethos and purpose is shaping your search for talent.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me, Brent and Joy. Good to see you again. Proud SFUer. So keep up the good work. First a little bit about our company. So we're a technology company founded by farmers, for farmers. Our whole goal is really around shortening the food supply chain and minimizing the use of natural resources and maximizing our cubic space, hence the name CubicFarms. And so what our technologies do is they use less land, less water and energy, and then we get to produce produce and livestock feed 365 days a year. And so a lot of our technology has been driven out of the need of reducing our supply chains. A head of lettuce, I think on average, takes 2,000 miles to get to your table at commercial scale. And the use of water on a farm, versus the use of water on one of these modules is about 95% less in our systems. With climate change and drought sort of impinging many parts of the world, a lot of communities and organizations and governments are looking for ways to produce food sustainably within their borders. And that's what our company does. And we have 2 commercial scale indoor systems that we create. One is our CubicFarm system, which grows fresh lettuce, herbs, and microgreens indoors anywhere in the world. We have a patented technology, which we call crop motion technology. It moves hundreds of plants through a growing path within a module that minimizes our footprint and maximizes growing efficiency by bringing plants to a light and then moving them away from a light, much like the world, like the earth and plants work today with sun and day and night, that sort of thing. We use 95% less water, as I mentioned, and we are 52 times more land efficient in the use of our systems. We have another system called HydroGreen, and our HydroGreen system deliver fresh livestock feed to farmers on site on their farms 365 days a year. We have an automated growing system. It's basically starts as a seed on a platform. We dose it with water and light, and 6 days later, we go from seed to super feed, which is a big tread, chop it all up, fully automated, press of a button, goes out and cows eat it on the other end. Highly nutritious and easily digestible, increasing cattle performance. And so those are two of the systems. I feel kind of lucky. I go to work every day to kind of work on this stuff, which is an answer to a world that is not sustainable and having consequences for it. And we have a business that's created at addressing this issue. And I think this is exciting. One of the reasons why I moved from a larger corporation who's doing great work in sustainability in itself, but wanted to really get local, and I wanted to really kind of focus on a more specific targeted need in ag tech. We all got to eat. So as an Italian, it's important for me that that we continue on that path. We're about 120 people right now. We have a head office in Langley, an R&D site in Pitt Meadows, and we have an office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which builds our hydrogreen systems. We have 25 roles open this morning. We continue to open roles. We're hiring people everywhere from mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, machine learning engineers, full stack developers, plant scientists, customer service specialists. And so, when you look at an organization, the emerging ag tech field, what you notice is that it's not just one type of individual. It's a multidisciplinary, it's a very diverse set of people that need to come together to problem solve. And the type of talent that we're really targeting is talent that's able to operate in almost every one of those areas, and be able to contribute in the whole big picture and have systems thinking in sustainability. And that's really, I think, sort of the emerging talent profile that's coming out of this. Really different for me, coming from where I came from before to here. And so I'm pretty excited to engage in the topic today because, as we're growing, talent is number one.
Great. Really interesting. Thanks, Edo. Well, let's talk about talent then, because that is our topic today. And so let's dive in maybe deeper on that. And maybe just for context, because we've said it's important, if you look at survey, why is it important? Well, it's going to be a competitive advantage, right, for firms going forward. So just on the attraction side for a moment, we'll talk about the talent and whether we can find it. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But just on the attraction side for a moment, if you look at some of the studies, what we're seeing out there is firms that score high, and there's all these metrics around how you perform on your ESG goals. And so, in the studies that have been done for the firms that are scoring higher on ESG, their employees significantly report higher satisfaction. So there's a retention right there in terms of a competitive advantage. And the other one you see is for firms that score high, consistently in surveys, that's where, as an attractiveness of where you want to work, employees or prospective employees rank those organizations higher on their list, given those values. So you say, okay, the stronger you are in this area, the more dedicated you are to it, the more your organization's living these values, the more successful you're being in it, you're going to have a competitive advantage from retention and attracting the talent that you need. And at a time when that's in short supply, it's going to be a significant business driver. So I think, for companies that are already ahead of this curve, that have been already working on this for years, they're going to have a built-in advantage for time as others try to kind of come to life with all of this. I think the other interesting piece for people to think about, the generations that have, again, consistently put this as one of their top priorities is Gen Z and millennials. Mm-hmm. Others have as well, but they're coming to it later in life and now making those decisions. But that Gen Z and millennial group, which are going to be 70% of our workforce by the end of this decade, consistently, it's one of their top decision factors in where they want to work, what do they want to be doing, where do they want to invest, what products do they want to purchase. So you've got a potent mix of the talent you're going to need it's one of their top issues. There's going to be fewer people, and this ESG piece is going to be a strong piece. So it's a competitive advantage for organizations just from a business perspective, let alone doing well for the world. I'm curious, from your perspectives then, because this has evolved, and especially for smaller and medium, they may not have seen it as much, but they're going to if they haven't. But what are you seeing? And you'll come at it from maybe different perspectives. Edo, in terms of recruits, you were at Microsoft previously, you're now at CubicFarms. Just have you been seeing that trend? Are you hearing from them in terms of their evaluation of companies? Have you been seeing this over the last few years? And I guess, Joy, this kind of attraction of talent, and this might be staff or students, frankly, I guess in your case. So in terms of recruiting the people you need at SFU, are you also seeing this sort of ESG focus in their decision making? And so maybe Joy, I'll start with you, and then Edo will go to you.
Yeah, I would certainly say as an organization, as an institution with 37,000 students and thousands of faculty and staff, I said at the very beginning, I think that the values of an organization really is a key attractor, and to have a very clear ESG kind of approach, I think is very, very important. Certainly at this time. And to your point, I think our students in particular are looking for institutions that will not only state values, but live those values. I think that's very important. The other thing I'll say as someone who produces talent, an institution that produces talent, I think it's also really incumbent upon us to be thinking about about the barriers that might exist for people to come into the university and to participate in university education. What we're also seeing is our industry partners wanting to diversify their workers as well, and not finding that diversification. And so that's the other side of this for me, Brent, as well, is to think about, how at a university like Simon Fraser, particularly in areas like engineering and computing science, we can make sure we have a diverse workforce. And it's interesting. I think that the values, driving with values can really help with that. And one great example is our energy engineering program, or energy and systems engineering program. Because that program, it's an engineering program, but very focused on really important issues related to climate change and management of energy. We saw a very different pool of people applying for that program. Our first classes had 50% women, which was unheard of. And I think that's something that is a kind of a proof point for us to be thinking about the kinds of programs and purpose-driven education as well, and how we kind of align these things. And that's true for energy systems engineering, but that could be true for all of our programs as well. And we need to figure out how to enunciate that social purpose in the programming that we offer, because I think it does make a difference for young people being attracted into these types of programs.
Yeah, interesting. Edo, any thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I really, I think just a word that Joy said that I touch on is really purpose driven. I think when, I think it was the 2000s or late a long time ago, I remember the literature and sort of the genre of value-based companies sort of came out, right? And then sustainability became, another driver. And then you see corporations like my previous one has done tremendous jobs to, I think actually the CEO, Sachin Adela, won an award the other day on sustainability, which is amazing to see that type of movement. And it's driven by, a young generation that is doing the right things, right? And it's really demanding that we be more valuable, we be better, and I really appreciate that. And then it comes to that sort of value-based company becomes values and purpose-driven, like our company is created really in this genre, right? And so I think more companies like ours need to be created to be more specifically tackling ESG issues that are part of the economy. And so what, I would, push on talent, as I'm working in this company, what I would love to see more is more sustainability as part of design thinking.
Yeah.
In the talent that comes to us, and I think that's super important, because I think in some companies that may not be working on an ESG agenda as part of their ROI, but it's more of their internal ROI as a value-based company, that I would love to see more of that design thinking coming out in talent today, because that's what's going to make better products that are going to be economically viable, that are going to drive this ESG economy. So it's not just a ESG thing. It is our normal way of working, right? I think we're at the beginning of that. And I would say in the ESG world, it's hard because often, your economic output is not measured in a world that considers ESG as part of their economic output. And so these things need to meet at some place, and that's going to be driven by this talent that we see today as they bring in that sort of sustainability design thinking into everything they do.
Yeah, if I can just pick up on that, one of the things our students are asking for are, certificates in sustainability or, added on to their degrees so that they can actually add this piece in. And I think it's really important for us as universities to be thinking about that. But also, and this is to think about people who are already out in the workforce, to think about how we can also provide this for them. And I'm really excited about, this, and you can think about that as a form of upskilling, I guess, about adding this additional layer into, existing set of expertise. But we're recognizing more and more that people do need this, and we need to find ways to work with industry and other partners to potentially provide these types of offerings. And there's some great examples right now. The digital, the supercluster is doing work in this space around, micro-credentials. We've got a project started with them, and palette skills that Arvind Gupta is pushing with, also with BC here, thinking about how do we add on some of the additional skills that are going to be required to actually get people placed. And as you do that, thinking about also the diversity of those people and how we can also place people into positions that they might not otherwise be seen as being quote appropriate for. So I think there's a lot of creative thinking that we can do together to address these issues.
Interesting. I mean, we've touched on it. Let's come to it directly. And so we've talked a lot about the sustainability side, but we've sort of dived in a little bit on the diversity and equity and inclusion side as well. And what are some of the barriers there? Because I think the pipeline, where is this talent coming from and who's? And so, Joy, what are you seeing in terms of some of the barriers that still exist? I mean, you talked about maybe new programs that are trying to open new doors and things. And so what's SFU doing, and what are you sorting out there with your colleagues in terms of trying to improve that, the diversity that is coming out of the post-secondary institutions?
Yeah, I think just on a few fronts then, I think particularly with our Indigenous partners, we're working hard on pathways to education. And this is so important for all of us, right? And that involves everything from getting out into communities and having our young people meet university professors or have them visit our campuses to feel like this might be a place for them. It also involves indigenizing our campuses and finding ways to make our places feel like they're welcoming. That's very, very important. It's important for Indigenous communities, but also from an equity and inclusion lens altogether as well. The other thing that's really interesting to me, and again, I just going to reflect on a conversation I did have with Arvind on what he's seeing. I think that there are a number of people who are underemployed in our system as well, who really just have not had the leg up and really need additional support to get placed. And that sometimes is, through educational programs, but it's also through coaching and mentorship to bring people to a place where they can actually apply for a job, be seen as being viable into that position, and then being supported into that position. So I think we need to wrap our heads around this in a much bigger way. I mean, there's some pretty scary data about who gets hired and who doesn't get hired. And I think we talk about trying to deal with unconscious bias, but we know we still have a long way to go in terms of helping people see the possibilities in someone who's applying for a position. And I certainly recognize, and at our, and Brent, you have talked about this at SFU, we need to do that work too. That we have a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that we, I think even our professoriate, we tend to replace ourselves, right? You look for another person just like me, and we need to think more broadly about diversity of perspectives, but also diversity of life experiences, because we know better ideas come from making sure that we do have a diverse set of talent working together. So I think there's a number of fronts that we're going to need to address. And certainly for me at SFU, the whole area of inclusion is absolutely essential. It's one of the issues of our times. I think we all are thinking a lot about it, thinking about the work that we have ahead of us. I think, this work won't be one and done. It will have to be done in partnership with our communities as well. So it's exciting, but it's hard work for sure.
Great. We just have a few minutes left, and I think I want to just take us to kind of a final piece around BC more broadly, and kind of this question of ESG and how BC competes, right? If this is going to be one of the differentiators of the next couple decades potentially in terms of where talent moves to, where they choose to live, where they choose to work, and if we take if BC was a company, how would we be looking at that? And so we'd love to get your thoughts on that, because if we did act that way, if we thought that way, and I think Jerry and Bill were sort of talking about this a little bit, right, in terms of we actually have a leg up probably already, right? There's already a brand and an identity in BC that a number of leading organizations in this province have for many years taken a progressive and leading view and leadership position on whether sustainability issues or social issues within their organization and within the community. And so I think there's a brand that we can already build on there and go. What for you two, and from your vantage points, and Edo, I'll start with you. I mean, are there weaknesses there? What are some of the inhibitors? What would you want to see there that would help create that ecosystem in this province? Like, is there a selling point we need to really amplify? Is there weaknesses we need to fix? What's just some of your thoughts on this BC ecosystem from a ECG attraction and retention longer term?
Yeah, I mean, there's many attractive things about our ecosystem. If I could, I like the way you positioned it as if it's your business. I mean, the first thing is that I want to be able to sell my business in my province. And so the previous discussion around procurement, I think, is critical, because the innovation that you do in your backyard is what is going to attract the best people in the world to come and work for you. You want to work in a place. So, for example, you think of Fraser Valley, the Kelowna, Soyuz, Naramata, all that region. That these are like hotbeds of agriculture. The wine industry went from a couple of wineries to what it is today, which is a massive business in British Columbia, and attracting all kinds of people that want to work there to make the best wines in the world. We want to attract the best people in agriculture to work at our company and others in the Fraser Valley, because that's where the best work gets done. In order for us to accelerate our innovation, we need to sell in our local area first. That's number one. And then our talent's going to stay home, right? It doesn't have to go to Holland, or it doesn't have to go to other places in the United States to get that experience, because we'll create that experience in British Columbia. I think that's super, super critical. Number two point, really, I think for us is I really want to touch on a point Johnny made earlier around upskilling. In a world, especially in an industry like agriculture, where digitization now is taking that over, just like every other space, the need for people to have access to education and that allows them to be more productive and to accelerate their understanding of ag tech within their ecosystem is just creating best people and the best know-how within our borders. And I think that is really, really critical, because it is complex, and there's, like we talked about before, of all the sort of diverse types of roles that are in that particular business. And I don't think this is something that's just ag specific. I think we see this in pretty much every industry right now. So that acceleration of adopting, lowering the barrier to access to education for people that might not have the education that they had originally, right? They can just keep building on that. We become a learning organization. That's what we try to do. We need to be a learning ecosystem. And then the final piece is making it easy, which I think is an advantage that BC has, of attracting the top talent in the world to come here to help teach and build an ecosystem in here. Those individuals need to come easily into our ecosystem to help build it. So I think those are three 3 points I think are interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Edo. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be as I say, this war for talent. The easier BC makes it for people to come here. We've already seen there's not enough people here to fill these roles, and so we need to make it easier to get talent into this province. And I know the governments are working on that. Joy, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I really liked what Edo had to say about this, both particularly around kind of the ecosystem. We are fairly siloed. When you think about the different, sectors. And I really do believe we do need to work together and find ways to connect together more and more. I think that's just so important, and we can help each other. We've been involved in, for example, as SFU in conversations about landing companies, to come and have headquarters here in BC because they want access to talent and they want to hear about our programs. And so, is that our business to help land companies? Well, no, but that's what we have to do together, right? We have to work together and share information, talk about what's happening, and think about ways we can kind of, grow the system together. And that's why I'm just so pleased to be part of the conversation today, because I think sometimes, I'm putting my hand up and going, what about, the post-secondary system? We are part of growing this ecosystem. We play an important role. And so I think that's something we need to continue to work on. And I certainly see organizations like BCBC as playing a key role in this. Like, they do bring us together and have these conversations. And that is why, that is the value proposition here. And I think in addition, I'll just also amplify the point that was made that, students and faculty want to come here and study because they also think there's going to be jobs here, that there's opportunities here. And that's the narrative that industry has, but it's also the narrative that we have, that, this is a great place to raise a family, our province, there are many opportunities. And I think increasingly as well, for our learners, it's not just you're going to land a job and that'll be it for the rest of your lives. People are moving through different kind of systems as well. And so again, how to support that, how to support people to kind of find their journey in terms of, their work journey, and contribute, to growing the BC economy together, in a way that will be sustainable, equitable, and inclusive. It is a great brand, I think, right now for BC, and it's something I think we can really build on. So I'm very excited about it. I think there's a lot of possibilities.
That's great. Well, thank you both. I think we're just up at our time. We did well, so thank you for that. I'll echo the comments. I think BC has such a phenomenal opportunity, but it takes purpose. Right? It takes focus. It's not going to just happen. We have a lot of great organizations working on this. We had our innovation commissioner on earlier, and the digital supercluster and SFU and all these other organizations that are working on it, and BC trying to pull this all together. But we need government to be focused on this. We need business to be focused on this, or we'll miss our opportunity. Right? There's sort of a window here where we can really cement that reputation and that attraction that people want to be here, want to work with our companies, and we have such a great group of companies in this province doing work in these areas, and we've got the universities that can attract them as well. So, Edo, really appreciate your time today and your comments. Thank you, Joy, you as well. Much appreciated. Always nice to see you.